Good evening, everyone. My name is Abhishek. I'm part of Ashraya, a church community based out of Chennai. We are having these conversations every 2 weeks. We've been having conversations on how we can help the community, help each other out by having discussions on very important life topics. We've spoken on work, we've spoken on emotional health, and today is a topic that I think is very important for all of us. And to me personally, I've always felt that though I've done an MBA, they didn't teach any of this when I took up an MBA. Right, these practical skills is what was missing, and I felt I got into the game late. And I'm sure a lot of us joining in also might have these kind of thoughts or feelings, and especially in a time like this where maybe we are conscious about our finances, our savings, and maybe some of us already have loans and debts that we are taking on, and it's weighing on us. And we felt it's important that we talk about this and get a conversation started. And to do that, I'm very happy that we could have Glenn here with us. Glenn, this is Glenn's fourth session of the day. So he's graciously agreed to be a part of this dialogue, bringing in all over 2 decades of experience in financial management and financial training to this conversation, right? So I'm just going to hand it over to Glenn. Maybe talk a little bit about where he's from and what his take is, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here and thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a long day, but I hope I keep my sanity intact. Uh, Finance is a very intriguing subject because to some, finance is so close to the heart, and to some, finance is so far away. Some of us, thinking about money every moment of a time. I remember a colleague of mine who had 30 credit cards, and the way he uses it, and he thinks so much that when a credit card comes for payment today, he will withdraw money from the other credit card and pay for this, and when that card comes for payment, he will use the other card to pay for this. So someone can be so obsessed with finance, and then you have people on the other end of the spectrum who are just not bothered. They say, yeah, my dad gave me some shares. And I remember another person, I think I was visiting Kunur and visiting this person, and he said, yeah, my dad gave me some shares and I've kind of dumped it. And when I look at the shares, and I told him that the value of the shares was nearly 1 crore of rupees. So you have people at both the extremes. And as you go along, finance becomes so important to manage because we live in a country where you don't have social security. You're not going to have any help in crisis like the coronavirus recession. And today we are staring at a crisis. So these financial principles, which are usually very, very important for us in any time, becomes even more important and even more relevant during these types of recessions. And there are a few things which I'd like to say about that, but we will take it as we go forward. But this is the time when we need to tighten our belt, when we plan ahead, and while we don't spend too much time sweating about our finances, it's also very important for us to plan ahead and be ready to face the emergencies. So I think with those few lines and a quick brief intro about me, I got into finance unknown, straight from college, got thrown into a company which was into stockbroking, went on to head the company's foray into online trading. We were only the second company in India to do online trading, and then manage the portfolio companies. So we managed about I think about close to 500 crores, and then I moved to a larger company which managed about 4,000 crores. And one point of time we got tired of it because we realized that people will never be satisfied. If you give them 20%, they want 25. You give them 25, they want 30. But another idea which came to us and what made us start Finmark was basically that India was one of the most financially illiterate countries in the world. Would you believe me that in 2014, when we did this research, that Pakistan had a higher financial literacy rate than India. Bangladesh, I think, still has a higher financial literacy rate than India. So our financial literacy rate was so poor that me and another colleague decided that it's time for us to start a financial literacy company. That's how Finmark came. 4 years have gone by very fast. We do financial literacy training right from school kids right from a sixth standard kid right up to senior bankers. So bouquet of training spans across these fields. And over the last the month or so, I think we've done about 17 to 18 programs, basically targeting the common man and telling them how do they handle their finances, especially during this times of the COVID recession, which is already on us. So with that, Abhishek, over to you. You want to, as Abhishek asked me the questions, I will uh, not give him direct answers. I'll make it a little complicated. Not, I'm just joking, but I will go back and draw a few parallels, use a few illustrations to drive home the point, and I hope that is okay. I'm good, Abhishek.
Perfect. Perfect. So I thought before we get into it, I'll just share the format in which we'll proceed. There are a couple of opening questions that I will share with Glenn, and Glenn will give his opinions on that. And then we will open it out for questions, because we believe it's better that we speak to your questions rather than have a long presentation and save 15 minutes of questions at the end. The hope is that we keep it as relevant as possible. Uh, so even as we get started, I'd encourage you to start putting your questions even right now in the chat space that you can share, and we'll try to address as much as we can in the 50 minutes that we have going forward. Right. Having said that, I've always Zoom has this interesting thing of keeping some nice backgrounds. I've been told that whenever you do a podcast, even if your questions are not intelligent, your background should look intelligent, right? So I always keep myself in front of a bookcase, right? So people might at least think, okay, maybe he's not making too much sense now, but at least he's read a few books, right? But I must confess that most of it are my wife's books, right? So I just sit in front of the bookcase for my podcast. So Glenn, let's get right into it. Can we? I mean, like you said, it is a crisis situation, but obviously, we are not trying to scare people at this time. That's not the intent at all.
Yeah.
But I really liked what you said. Is people have been talking about saving for a rainy day. In fact, one of the people who was talking about the virus itself said, it attacks people who have pre-existing health conditions or low immunity. And that doesn't mean you can build your immunity right now after the virus is attacked. Your immunity is built over time ahead, and because of decisions you've made with regard to diet or exercise or whatever it is. And now, when the virus hits you, your body is able to handle it. And I'm looking at finance also in a similar way, right? It's not when a crisis hits and you suddenly try to figure out something.
Mm.
So, can we talk about, like, let's say, some of the common assumptions or mistakes that we tend to make, which leaves us vulnerable at a time like this?
Sure. Right. So let me address a few, generic points about what mistakes we make. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we make, and pardon those who are a little older, is that we never start young, right? If you start young in terms of savings or investments, the advantage is huge. And I tell a lot of young people this whenever we address college students, that if a person who's 20 years old wants to have a corpus of 5 to 6 crores when he retires at 60 years, all he has to do is invest little more than 2,000 rupees per month. Little more than 2,000 rupees per month in something called a systematic investment plan. We'll talk about that later. Don't worry about that. But 2,000 rupees per month, if he generally can invest, then he will get the 5 to 6 crores 99% of the time when he's 60 years. Now, if he forgets to do that when he's 20 and starts when he's 30, he will need 17,000 plus rupees per month to reach that. If he forgets it when he's 30 and starts when he's 40, he will need 80,000 rupees to reach a goal of 5 crores. 80,000 per month. And if you forget it when you're 40 and start when you're 50, you need 1.77 lakhs per month to get to 5 crores when you retire. So starting early is a mistake which a lot of us make. We never start early. When as we are getting older, we start getting worried that, oh, we have children's education, we need to buy a house. And then suddenly you realize you're 50 years old, you have another 10 more years to retire. And then, you have a problem living a comfortable retired life. So starting early is one big problem. A second big problem which we as Indians have, we are stuck to investing in traditional investments like fixed deposits. South India is known for chit funds and physical gold, all which are now outdated. and which doesn't make sense to do anymore. Let me give you a quick example on a fixed deposit. If you're below 60 years of age, today you get 5.5% on a fixed deposit. When you get 5.5%, that is not your take home. There's a tax which is deducted. So the amount, the percentage of the FD which you take home in terms of interest will be only 5%. Inflation, right? It's not a big term. We need to learn what inflation is, which is rise in price levels. The rise in price levels in our country today is 5.71. So on one hand, your fixed deposit is giving you 5%, and on the other hand, inflation is 5.71, which means you're actually getting a real negative rate of return, 0.7% negative. The value of your money is gone down. The value of that money is gone down. So that is another big, danger, and which most Indians fall into, and therefore we are not able to meet our expenses. We think that by putting it in FD after 5-10 years, we'll be able to meet our children's studies. But by then, the cost of your children's fees has gone up. The FD is giving you much lesser return than you expected, and therefore the gap exists. And that is a big issue. So those are some of the problems. Not insuring ourselves enough, another big problem in India. We don't insure. We are one of the most underinsured countries in the world. So these are some of the common mistakes we make. Not planning for retirement, another big problem. Thinking our sons and daughters will take care of us is a common mindset which we use and make a mistake. Times are changing. We need to plan for a retirement. 70% of Indians are below 30 years of age. Below 30 years of age. Take 30 years later, a large percent will be above 60 years of age. We need to plan early. Abhishek, I hope I answered that.
I think that's
yeah.
Absolutely, Glenn. I'm just like, there's so much of information that you're sharing. I mean, that's what we are here for. Like you said, let's go into some of terms, because when about savings and all of that, people use these terms while they mean something else. For example, I remember a lot of people, when they take insurance, they ask, how much will I get back? Right? They confuse insurance with investment, right?
Absolutely.
So they're like, so if I put a term life, you mean I won't get anything back, then what's point? I'd rather put. So I just would like you to just maybe talk about these terms and how we tend to misunderstand them. Savings, investment, insurance, then what's the problem?
Abhishek, I'm kind of
losing
you. I think you're
EMI
breaking.
Or credit.
You're breaking.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just would like you to touch upon maybe the wrong ways, and maybe correct us on the right ways of using these terms: savings, insurance, purchasing through EMI, credit, and what's wrong with this when today everybody is willing to give you loans for everything.
Yeah. So quickly, let me first start since you spoke about insurance. I think that's a very important question you asked. As a financial advisor, you are taught the basic rule of not mixing insurance and investment. If you are a 30-year-old, you can take a 50 lakh term insurance by paying about 700 to 750 rupees per month. That's all. You will get a 50 lakh cover. But that is a term or a pure risk insurance. What does that mean? If you are a 30-year-old and if you've taken a 30-year-old term insurance, it means that at 60 years old, if you're celebrating your 60th birthday and having a big party, that's fantastic, great. But you'll also have to remember something bitter, and that is that you've lost all the premiums which you paid. But that is okay, because you paid a very small premium per month to get your 50 lakhs cover. Now, if you take LIC kind of insurance, the endowment policies, the money back, the ULIP, unit-linked insurance plan, those kind of policies which LIC or any other insurer sells you, and they sell you that because they earn a higher commission on that. They earn 4 to 5% on every policy which they sell you, and that money comes out of the premium you pay. But they will not sell you a term insurance because they get a very small amount, maybe 0.5%. So very important for us to understand that when we take a term insurance, we are protecting our family with a very low amount. That helps you take a high insurance. It helps you take a crore plus by paying just about 1,500, 2,000 per month. If you take a crore or even a little more than that. But if you took the same 2 crores of insurance or 1 crore of insurance in endowment plan or a money back plan, you will have to pay about 15 times more than what you pay for a term plan per month. which means you will have to pay close to 10,000 rupees to get a 50 lakh cover on an endowment, even maybe a little more. And an insurance company, please remember, is not an investment company. The returns are usually very bad. I'll give you a personal example. When I got married in the year 2000, and that's a long time. So when I got married, I took an insurance policy, and I took an insurance policy, which was basically an endowment kind of policy, and I also invested in a mutual fund, into shares, the equity mutual fund. So I put the idea was to put 2,000 rupees in each every month. In 2013 or 14, I'm not sure. I had to withdraw both because I had an investment to make. So I withdrew both. On the mutual fund, I got a return of 14% per annum. Per annum. On the insurance, the endowment policy, I got a total of 14%, which actually means I got about 1% per year. And when I looked into what the problem was, I realized that they were charging me about 6 to 7% every year on their charges. So that is a big problem. So when you take an insurance, take a term policy, the extra money which you have, invest it in a mutual fund. Do a systematic investment plan. Systematic investment plan as an investment is so important, because the systematic investment plan means that every month you're buying the same amount of shares again and again and again. When I say you, I mean the mutual fund which you have to do your SIP through. And if you have more questions on that, I'm happy to talk to you about that. Because an SIP is one of the foolproof ways of making money using the volatility of the stock market. Because as the stock market comes down, it's actually beneficial for you because your average cost keeps coming down. And later when the market turns and goes up, which will eventually happen because these are cycles, then you will make a great amount of money. So people generally say if you do a systematic investment plan, do it for 5 years plus, but don't mix investment and insurance. Keep it separate. Take a term policy. The remaining money which you have, invest it in a mutual fund. That is my suggestion to you. Quickly, you had another point, Abhishek, on
how do we differentiate between savings and investments? If at all we do.
Savings. Yeah. See, the differential is a very thin line, but however, I'd like to define it this way. A savings is when you basically either don't get any return on that, or you get a return which is much, much lower than inflation. For example, if you put your money in a savings bank today, you will hardly get 2%, little more than 2%. Now, that 2% is eaten up by rise in costs every year. Or you buy gold and keep it in your locker. That's a saving. It's not an investment. Investment is something which gives you constant return, which is liquid, which you can change, which you can quickly change. If something is going wrong, you can sell it and buy something else. Now imagine if you bought physical gold and you put it in your locker and suddenly you find that gold prices are going down, you want to sell that gold. All hell will break loose at home, right? Your wife's not going to let you do that. So, but I was telling Abhishek earlier, times have changed. Today, Indians are today investing in electronic gold. 11,000 crores this year has been invested in electronic gold, higher than physical gold for the first time in the history of our country. So e-gold or electronic gold today is taking over. So the way we invest is changing. The way we invest today, you have electronic gold, shares you can buy even one share today. When I was young, you had to buy minimum 50 shares. So if I wanted to buy a company like Reliance, because they're doing so well, Reliance Jio, they're saying is going to be listed in America. You have Facebook and everyone, they're calling it Jio platforms. If I want to invest in Reliance today, I can, with 1,500 rupees, I can buy one share. But when I was young, to invest into Reliance, I needed to buy minimum 50 shares. And if it was 1,500 rupees, I needed 75,000 rupees. But today you could buy one share. I was just telling some students in the morning when I was addressing them, you don't have that amount of money. Even if you have 5 rupees 50 paisa, you can buy one share of Vodafone Idea. That money, that 5 rupees 50 paisa, you won't get a recharge of the company, but you own the company. You're a part owner of the company with 5 rupees 50 paisa. So investments have changed. It's become so easy. Shares can be bought electronically, even in one lot. Gold can be bought. 1 unit of electronic gold is 0.01%, 0.01 gram. With 42 rupees, you can buy 1 gram of gold. Real estate is becoming electronic. It's on the financial markets today. We'll not get into that. It gets complicated, but it's called REITs for those who like to do some homework. Real Estate Investment Trust. With 1.2 lakhs, you can buy a small portion of an apartment or a commercial complex or a SEZ, which otherwise we cannot afford to buy. So investments are changing. And as they change, we also have investments which are more risky, unregulated, and safer investments. So we need to be careful about that. Maybe a little later, I think I'm sure Abhishek has a question on that. We'll answer that.
Sure. I think there are a couple of questions that have already come in on what you've shared, Glenn. One is, in the current climate, is it advisable to invest in SIPs now? And the other is, if not SIPs, what are the best investments to make in the current situation?
So let me just put this in context, right? Maybe I'll share the screen a little later. I don't want to disturb the flow. But how long could this recession last? And how are we prepared in terms of our finances and investments? Let me address it a slightly different perspective. See, generally, if you look at the last 5 depressions, which has happened in the last 100 years and affected the global markets and the global scenario, the minimum time frame it is taken to recover is 36 months. The maximum it's taken is about 52 months. So you're going to see this pain lasting for anywhere between 3 to 4.5 years. However, you have a recovery and a dip. So today, most people, compare what we are facing to the Great Depression of 1929. Now, I think that is everywhere. I'm not scaring you by saying that, but the Great Depression was a scary time. People didn't have jobs. You had a great famine. And believe me, you see a lot of similarities when you read about the locusts which are hitting North India. And that is a great fear, because if they destroy the crops, you're also going to have a famine situation. The last thing which India wants. But the Great Depression, the worst time of the Great Depression was 4 years, 1929 to 1933. But within that 4 years, it had a recovery after 18 months. It recovered after 18 months, went up a little. The economy, looked good when everyone said it was fine. It fell again, and then it recovered. So you are going to see about 3 to 4 years of pain. You're also going to see a great amount of job loss, salary deferment, and even salary cuts. CIA says, I think about 50%, 50 to 60% of all employees in India will have a salary cut between 10 and 50%. I'll show you a news cutting from the Economic Times a few days back. They say in the travel and tourism industry, there are 5.5 million workers. That is 55 million workers, 5.5 crores. And they say 3.8 crores will lose jobs. In the automobile sector, 5 crores employees, 3.3 crores will lose jobs. Teachers, 18 million teachers, they are saying 4.5 million will lose jobs. So we are looking at a scenario which is probably unprecedented. Maybe once in a lifetime, we will see something like that. Are we prepared? Very important to be prepared. And to be prepared, I want to tell you, it's important for us today to have something called an emergency fund. An emergency fund typically means building 4 to 6 months of your household expenses and keeping that liquid, probably in your savings bank account. So if at all you meet with a crisis of your boss telling you that salaries cannot be paid, or you have to take a 30-40% cut in salary, or in the unfortunate case of retrenchment, you don't panic, because you have at least that 6 months as cushion to take care of you. The government actually is encouraging you to build an emergency fund, because they can't give you money. That is why they said you can withdraw 3 months of your EPF. That is why they're giving you moratoriums. Now, moratoriums, I won't suggest you take it unless you're in a desperate position. But if you're in a desperate position, don't take it on your credit card, don't take it on your personal loan. You can take it on your housing loan. So that is a good option. That is a good option, because even the interest which is carried forward today at only about 7.5%, because housing loan interest rates have come down. So build an emergency corpus. Don't use credit cards during this time, because you have a credit limit. Don't use credit cards, because you are charged 40% interest. Credit card, I would say, is a kind of a satanic attack, if you can ask me that, if you want me to be a little theological. But it is, it's a kind of addiction which you get into, and it's very difficult to get out. And I say this, experiencing it as a young person, that this is a danger. But today there is solutions. Today NBFCs give you overdrafts. Overdrafts are something new, but it's available. So any salaried person actually can get overdrafts. NBFCs like Bajaj Finance, Clicks Capital give you these overdrafts. They approve an overdraft limit. You need to apply for it. It costs you about 2,000, and they give you an overdraft of 2, 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs, and they charge you only when you use it. And so, if any emergency situation, use your overdraft. Don't use your credit card. So that is something which I also want to tell you. And third thing, be very careful where you invest during these times. Be very careful. I was telling Abhishek earlier also, I have a 3R principles. The principle of the 3Rs: reliable, realistic, and review. Stay only with the reliable names. Don't go for unreliable names. When you say reliable, I'm talking also about regulated. What does regulated mean? You have someone watching over them, someone controlling them. So if they go wrong, you at least have someone who will save you or pay you part of the money back. But there are so many unregulated players, chit funds, this monthly gold investment scheme. All that is unregulated. And China is seen in the last, I think, 3 gold jewelry companies doing this monthly investment scheme going bankrupt. And even if you go to Tinagar today, among the COVID, you see people standing waiting for the money because there's no regulator to give you back the money. So go with the realistic. I mean, go with the reliable. Even in the banks, people ask me which bank is safe, right? The government of India, they have, every country today has a couple of banks which are too big to fail. The government will not let them fail. So if you want the safest banks in India, SBI, HDFC Bank, and ICICI Bank, the government has the RBI has described them as too big to fail, because if they fail, the economy fails. Every other bank we don't know. None of them are in real bad trouble now, but it can, quickly deteriorate in the next 3 to 6 months. So we have to be with the reliable. Be realistic. Don't get greedy. This is a time never to be greedy, right? As Warren Buffett, the greatest investor, says, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. But today, he himself is fearful. He sold all his investments. So be fearful. Don't be greedy. Just because someone is giving you 2%, 3% more, invest in some small company, some small NBFC, some small finance company because he's giving me 11%. It's highly unlikely that you will get your money back. And constantly review. Wherever you put your money, please constantly go and review it. Right? I've been telling people this. An example of a bank called Lakshmi Vilas Bank. The bank had something called capital adequacy ratio, which is a safety ratio which RBI gives at 9%. Within 6 months, it fell from 9% to 3.5%. And today that bank is weak. Yes, they raise some capital and safeguard themselves. But if they can't, that's a danger. So what I'm trying to tell you, that a financial institution during these times can go from strong to weak in a few months. We need to constantly keep our eyes and ears open and not get trapped into this. And don't go into unregulated schemes. I think if we follow these few principles, we will keep our head above the water during this crisis. Long answer to a short question.
No. I think this is valuable. We are also recording this, by the way, so that people can actually go through this later also. Yeah. Glenn, a very basic question, right? For a lot of us, what we find is by the 10th of the month, our income or our salary is going zero. It's almost like a fuel tank, right? I used to have a gypsy. Whatever you fill in, by the time you reach home, the fuel is gone, right? The mileage was so poor. And a lot of us are living in these cycles. So we say, yes, I want to save for the future and all of that, but somewhere the money is leaking. I've heard people say, you need to save first and then spend. Is there some percentages that we can look at to ensure that, we are not left at the mercy of what we have remaining at the end of the month and then try to save or invest?
True. I think it was Warren Buffett or someone that said this very nicely. He said, if you don't, spend your money on something useful, very soon you will be selling something useful to, fulfill your needs. So it's very important for us to spend our money on things which are useful. And what is useful? Anything useful means something which can pay us back in times of need, where we can, sell that. So I think our spending pattern is crazy. Therefore, we run out of money at the end of the month. And one solution is maybe reduce your calendar to 10 days a month, but it doesn't work that way. I think the main reason is that I think we don't budget. All it takes for us is to sit and budget, knock off the unnecessary expenses, the expenses which we can live without. We can live with 2 pairs of shoes. We can live with maybe 10 sets of shirt and pants. We can live with 1 car instead of having 2 We can, live with so many things. We can buy a car which gives us better mileage. We don't have to live in a 4-bedroom house if we are only 2 or 3 of us. So I think, today the biggest danger is one-upmanship. We try to play the game of one-upmanship over the other person, and therefore we borrow and spend. We borrow and build our lifestyles to a certain level, and then when you have to come down from it, it is extremely, extremely difficult. So plan and budget. Put aside. See, there are 2 golden rules. Never borrow more than 35% of your net income. Never borrow more than 35% of your net income, and at least save 20% or 25% of your net income. If you can do that, you are in a good space. You're in a good space. 25% of your net income you should save. And if you're borrowing, don't borrow more than 35%. And when we talk about borrowing, the borrowing is in context not to live a luxurious life, but to buy an asset. Right? There is good borrowing and bad borrowing. Good borrowing is when you borrow to build an asset, which will give you cash flows which are higher. Typical buying a house. Buying a house. If I'm staying in a rented property paying 25,000, and this is something which I need to tell you today. If you are in a rented house, there is none better time than this for you to buy your own apartment or flat or house to move out. Simply because very, very soon, I think within a month or 2, RBI is going to reduce interest rates. And for the first time, already the interest rates for housing loans are at a 15-year-old low, 25-year-old low, sorry. If it falls below 7%, which it's likely to in the next few months, it happens once every 35 years. So you get interest rates less than 7% once every 35 years. And my guess is we will get it at about 6.7% in the next few months. Also, at the same time, the government is pressurizing builders to reduce their prices and sell, because all of them owe money to the banks. So the government is telling them, sell it at cost, get rid of it. Because if you get rid of it, you will pay the banks, and then we don't have to support banks. So I think very soon you're going to see builders reducing costs by 15, 20%, or at least 10%, and you're going to see housing loans come down to 6.75. That is a good borrowing, because you're borrowing cheap, you're borrowing for a long term by paying a small amount every month, and probably the EMI will be even less than the rent you pay. And also you get tax benefits, 2 to 2.5 lakhs per annum you can reduce from your tax burden. So this is a fantastic time to do something like that. So plan your investments, and I think you will definitely have some way to save. Yeah. If you're pushed to a corner, you will save. You will save. If you're not pushed to a corner, you will not save.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I also have, I think that's a good number, 25% to save. Yeah. And when you're saying savings, you're counting investments as well?
Yeah, when I say savings, I mean investments. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There's a very specific question from Mary in terms of, she's put up some numbers, right? 2,000 per month for 40 years can get you 5 crores if it's compounded by 21%. Is that correct?
How many years is she saying?
40 years, 40.
Yeah. If you invest in an SIP which is compounding at 16 to 16.5%, 2,900 rupees at around 20 years of age will give you your 5 crores when you're 60 years. Yeah, so you're not far away from the ballpark.
Okay.
So if you 21% you will not get anywhere, Mary. If you look at the stock market, if anyone has done an SIP for the last 60 to 70 years in India, the average return has been 15.5 to 16%. So take that as your benchmark. If you can compound at that rate, you will get there.
So you're talking about 16% compounding.
16% if you start investing young. See, one very important thing I want to tell you guys, follow the thumb rule of investment. This is the thumb rule of investment is developed by the American Standard of Financial Planning, a very simple rule, but it makes such immense sense. The rule says your age equals risk-free investment. Age equals risk-free investment. So Abhishek, how old are you?
37.
Okay, thanks for, I've exposed your age on.
No, I was hoping you'd say, no, but you don't look that old or something.
Oh, I wish I had.
we should redo that.
You don't. Honestly, you don't. Okay. 37 means if Abhishek has 100 rupees, as per this formula, 37 rupees will go on risk-free investment. That is in a FD, government securities, or a high-rated corporate NCD, AAA rated, those kind of investments. 37 rupees. The remaining 63 rupees will go into risky investments like shares, gold, real estate. It can go into that. But as Abhishek goes older, you turn the tables now, Abhishek is 73 and I hope he'll still look that way. But when he's 73, it will mean that 73 rupees goes into FDs and G6, government securities and safe investments, and only 27 rupees will go into risky investments. So it generally means as you're young, when you're young, take more risk. As you grow older, take less risk. So if you're doing a financial plan, and Mary, I don't know how old are you, but if you're in your 20s, then you go for shares, do a systematic investment plan, and see how much you need if it compounds at 16%. If you're in your early 20s, you will need about 2,800 to 3,000 rupees for you to get to that 5 crores around that amount, plus or minus 50 lakhs. You will get there. But if you're older, then you need to go for safer investments. So generally, three things. If you invest in shares, which is high, I wouldn't say highly risky, but more volatile, you get about 15.5 to 16% compounded over a long period, not over a short period. When I say long period, at least 10 years plus. If you invest in, balance, that is 50% in debt, 50% in shares, a balance kind of investment should give you about 11.5%. If you invest in the safest, like, government security, over a period of time, government securities gives you about 7.5, 8%. So using that math, you can do your formula and find it. I think Mary would have used something called a PMT function in Excel. It's not very complicated, actually. If you want, I can show you how it works. But let's see. You can do that calculation yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. A couple of interesting questions, which is, what would you, in your personal experience, what has worked, like going through SIPs or investing directly in shares yourself? And an added question to that is, if you have invested and suffered quite a big losses in the stock market, how do you deal with it and how do you bounce back?
See, let's make it very clear. A mutual fund, you go through a mutual fund just for the sake of discipline. If you can invest directly and do an SIP and buy the same shares month after month, assuming you're buying shares which are good names, good companies, which can last you for a lifetime, then it's fantastic. You don't need a mutual fund. But the problem is we are not disciplined. 1 month we will put our money in those shares, and next month we will say, it's the same price, let me use that and take a holiday. And the following month we'll say, let me use it, to buy something. And that's a problem. So mutual fund helps us in terms of discipline, not that we cannot invest directly in the shares. If we want to invest directly into shares, we need to do our homework. There is no easy money here. There's no easy money available anywhere. If you want to invest directly, you need to do your research. You need to pick a company which will last a lifetime. And I can show you so many examples of people who have invested in a good company, stayed the course, knowing it's a good company, never sold it, even when it went up 100, 200, 300%, never sold it. And the kind of wealth which they've left back for the next generation is amazing. But there are also many people who put in the money and they have such a short-term outlook that, as soon as the market falls, you have a recession like the COVID, they panic, sell and take a huge loss. And then they're banging the head 5 years later when the stock goes up 1,000%. So, that is it. So if you're confident that you can do your own research and invest, it's a great thing. I look sometimes, and sometimes investment is just common sense. I just give you an example. I'm not making a recommendation, but I tell a lot of people, when you look at shares to invest in, look at some companies which are monopolies. And one example which I want to give you today is a company called IRCTC, Indian Railways Catering and Ticket Corporation. No competition at all. Today it is a public-private enterprise. All they need to increase the profits is raise the booking fare by 5 rupees, and straight away the profits go up. All they need to do is increase the biryani from 150 to 160 rupees, or put one small piece of chicken or mutton less. That is straight a profit for them. So these kind of companies, no competition, virtual monopoly, will last a lifetime, because railways are not going to stop unless Elon Musk brings his hyperloop or something in. Very less competition, and the share prices now have fallen because railways were not running for some time. Now with the train started, it's kind of going up again. So, one needs to look at those stocks which will not go out of vogue very quickly, which has a monopoly, which everyone needs to use, must use. So it takes some work to do that, and take some discipline, and take some patience and perseverance. Most of us lack that. Therefore, we go to a mutual fund.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Just want to let you guys know that some of your questions are very specific. At the end of this, we'll also give you Glenn's email ID so that if you do want to connect on something, you can reach out to him as well. So we've already
Abhishek, you don't have to give the name. Just ask the question. It may benefit someone else. That's why I'm saying.
Okay.
If you think, yeah.
Sure. I also don't know, in the interest of time, whether we'll be able to go through all of it. So this is why I don't want people to feel bad.
Pick a few here. The rest I will answer you separately. Yeah.
Sure. So this is a question in terms of having a house that you purchased on EMI and paid 75% of its value, and you're currently in a financial situation. How do you deal with it?
I'm assuming you don't want to sell the house.
Yes.
If you don't want to sell the house and you paid 75% of it, perfect time to take this moratorium, which the government is offering. Perfect time to do it, because you have paid most of the interest. Only the principal, probably a little bit of it remains to be paid, and therefore the interest won't accumulate much. It won't compound and accumulate much. So you are in a perfect position to take a moratorium. So use this 3, 4, 5 months, whatever they give you, take the moratorium. If things settle down within that time, then it's great. Won't suggest you sell the house at this point of time. Won't suggest you sell it. The worst thing, you can do, another thing you can do is, if you are in a very bad situation, you need money, you can top up your home loan, because you paid 75%. The housing loan company is very happy. You're a good client. They will be happy to top up the loan, and you will top it up at probably 7%. So that is the cheapest way you can actually borrow and get out of this crisis. Just top up your home loan, if it comes to the worst case scenario. But if you can survive with this moratorium for the next 3, I guess maybe they might increase it by a month or 2, then you are, that's a good option for you to do, because you paid 75%. The remaining which needs to be paid is more of the principal. In a home loan, first they take all the interest and then take the principal. So you won't have too much to worry about it.
Okay. Thank you. Couple of questions around retirement planning. I think one is what vehicles to use in terms of PPF or NPS, things like that. The other is a very simple question, is like, when you say retirement, what is the amount that we need to plan for, right? Is there like a ballpark figure that we look at and hence work towards that number?
Can I use Excel for 1 minute if it doesn't become too technical? It's not going to be.
Sure, Glenn.
Yeah, I just want to show you one formula which is so very important. It's called future value. Right, let me just quickly take an Excel up. Just hold on for a minute. Abhishek, just before that, what was it which you asked me? PPF versus NPS.
PPS, right? NPS, and other retirement.
I would suggest, if you're young, go for an NPS. If you're a little older, go for the PPF. But please remember,
I think you have to define young and old. We all think we are young.
Young, I would say, 35 years and below, you can go for an NPS. Above 35, you start to get cautious. Definitely, if you're above 45, go for a EPF or PPF. That is a better thing to do. But please remember that as we go along in a falling interest rate regime, you're going to see lower and lower EPF numbers. But in an NPS, you get to choose. You have an ECG option: equity, growth, and you have ECC is corporate bonds, and G is government securities. So if you want high risk, you choose equity. If you want medium risk, you choose corporate bonds. And if you want G, which is government securities, that is the safest. So you have options to choose. The younger you are, take the more risk. Now, I want to give you, a very ballpoint way of calculating how much you need for your. This is just a rough way. Retirement planning, there is much more to do, but just a rough idea. So let me again, let's just say your monthly income, which you need for yourself. Forget your children, because when you retire, you won't have any expenses on that. Let's say you and your husband, or you and your wife, let us say your monthly expenses today for yourself is, let's say, 60,000. Okay. So how much will you need? So 60,000 is per month. So per annum, so 60,000 into 12 is 7,20,000. Okay. So this is what you need per month. So 7,20,000 into 1 plus R. What is R? R is basically your inflation rate, the price, which is the rise in prices. Because as you grow older, this 1 lakh, 60,000, which you need today, will not be enough. You will need more because prices are going up. So take your inflation rate. So let's take 6% as your inflation rate. Today is 5.7. Let's take 6 into the number of years. Into the number of years. Now let's say you are 30 years and you have another 30 years for retirement. So take 30 years. So this is the amount you're going to need per year. That is 41 lakhs 35,313 to live the same lifestyle which you're living today. Am I there or got disconnected? Okay. Yeah. Today you need 7.2 lakhs when you're 30 years. When you get to 60 years, you will need 41 lakh 35,313 per year to live the same lifestyle. To live the same lifestyle. So the one way to look at it, if you assume you're going to live for 21 years, you need 41 lakhs into 28 crores. But don't need to panic. That's another way to look at it. Let's say I have a corpus of 3 crores. And let's say I'm able to earn, let's even take at a higher percent, let's say 10%. So if I'm earning at 10%, I will get about, how much will you get per year? You will get about 30 lakhs per year. You'll get about 30 lakhs instead of 41. So can you reduce your lifestyle a little? Possibly, yes. So then you know that approximately you will need 3 to 4 crores when you retire. If you have 4 crores and you're able to generate 9 to 10% on that, you should meet your retirement corpus. However, please remember when you retire also there's inflation which hits you till you get to 75, 80 years. So, but this is a rough way to look at it. One way is 72 lakhs becoming 41, 77.2 lakhs becoming 41 lakhs is true. No escaping that. This is an accurate figure. And when you get there, you will realize, you'll probably remember what I said. And then into the number of years you think you will live. Or a corpus, and if you say I'm going to get 9 or 10%, that should be equal to 41 lakhs. So the formula which we've used is future value. So the formula, please remember, the formula simply is this: future value equals present value into 1 plus inflation. 1 plus R. The R is basically standing for inflation to the power of the number of years. To the power number of years.
The number of years I am going to be working.
The number of years between your age today and your retirement age. So if you're 30 and you're retiring at 60, you have 30 more years.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Right?
Got it.
So when we did this formula, we said you have 30 years. And if Abhishek tells me, hey, this is too much for me, I will not be able to get a corpus of 3 to 4 crores, then I will tell Abhishek, increase your working period to 65. So which means now you have 35 years. So if I put 35, then my increase goes to 5 crores 53 lakhs. 5 crores 53 lakhs. 55 lakh 33,000. Instead of 7.2 lakhs, I need 55 lakh 33,000. But to get there, I have 5 more years to invest. I have 5 more years to invest. So that's something which you can plan. That's some way you can plan. But this is the fact of the matter. This formula usually scares people when I show them how much you will need, right? So, but at least gives you a ballpark figure.
Yeah, and I think it's better to be scared now than when we're close to retirement, I guess. Glenn, couple of questions around how do we go about selecting SIP. Some people have said I've chosen ICICI Pro Equity. Do I need to invest in multiple SIPs? How do I go about that?
Again, depends on your age. If you're in your 20s, you can have multiple SIPs. See, SIPs generally into shares. You can divide it into 3 large cap shares. That means large companies, large capitalized companies, mid capitalized companies, and small capitalized companies. The small capitalized companies are highly risky but give you the highest return. The mid cap, medium risk, medium return. The large cap, is lesser risk, little lesser return. So if you're a little older in your 35s, 40s, then go for large caps. If you're, early 30s, then you can look at a little mid cap and large cap. If you're young in your early 20s, then have 3 SIPs, large cap, mid cap, and small cap. But as you grow older, just keep one SIP and keep it in the large cap. As you're younger, you can split it among 2-3 SIPs.
And what's the
ICICI
time?
is fine. ICICI, Birla, HDFC, all fine. But again and again, review, right? Who thought that a mutual fund like Franklin Templeton will be in trouble? Today they are in trouble. At least with the debt fund schemes, they are in trouble. And today they had a voting saying how they're going to virtually close those funds and how will the money be distributed. So whoever thought a year back that Franklin Templeton will be in trouble? But we need to be careful. That is why the review is so important.
Got it. And what's the time frame that we need to look at, Glenn? Because I see a lot of people, especially even now, maybe now is an extreme situation. They say I've invested for 1 year, 3 years, and the
If you
returns
do an
aren't great.
SIP, nothing less than, ideally 10 years, but nothing less than 5 years. Between 5 and 10 years, acceptable. Nothing less than 5 years. It will fail. It will fail badly unless you're extremely lucky.
So give us the frame, right? So you're saying minimum is 5 years. Yep. When can we get maximum value out of it? And how do we plan
that depends on your goal. If you are investing for your retirement, let the market go up, come down, let it go through cycles. But on an average, you will get your 15.5% when you're 60 years. However, if you're saying that if I reach a certain amount and I'm happy with it, I will close it. Then when it reaches that amount, take it. So it depends on your goal. Whether you're doing this SIP to buy a house or for your children's education or for your retirement, depends on the goal.
Yeah. So are you saying we need to have different SIPs for each, let's say, long-term, medium to long?
Yes. If you have different goals, have different SIPs and different amounts, because the amounts will differ.
Okay. And let's say some people are in debt right now, right? Maybe, like you said, one is the housing loan. You've given a suggestion for that.
True.
Let's say some people are in credit card debt. Some people have taken on personal loans and are struggling. What are some suggestions you have to help people get out of debt?
See, one thing which a lot of us don't do is negotiate. Right? If you have a problem, go to the credit card or the bank before they come to you. And tell them, boss, I'm in trouble. I cannot pay. I'm committed to pay. But, do something. Either waive the interest, negotiate. Negotiation will help you a lot. I've seen so many people coming out of this by just negotiating. And today is a good time for you to transfer. See, one rule while clearing debt is never take a costlier loan to clear a less costlier loan. Today, you can take cheap loans to clear your costlier loan. You can take a personal loan for 12.5% today. It's available at 12.5%, 13% to clear your 40% credit card loan. Not a bad idea. If you have a housing loan, top up your housing loan at 7% and clear your credit card bills at 40%. So take cheaper loans. It's available today to clear your, expensive ones. This is the best time to do that. Also, many companies, if you have taken a personal loan and it's high 17, 18%, you can transfer your personal loan at 12.5% today. Companies will do that happily if you have a good credit record. So time for you to renegotiate, for you to switch, for you to replace expensive loans with cheaper ones. And I don't know how many of you know that actually housing loans, if you've taken a floating rate, we assume that interest rate falls, our housing loan interest rates will fall, but it never falls in the same proportion. If RBI reduces interest rate by 0.4%, your housing loan interest rate falls only 0.15% or 0.1%. But today, if you go to any housing loan company and go to the website, you will find that you can actually pay a small fee and reset your prime lending rate. So if you've taken this housing loans about 5-10 years ago, your prime lending rate will probably be about 9 to 10%. If you reset it today, you will reset it at 8%. So if there's any interest rate cuts, it will happen from 8% down and not from 10% down. So that is something which you can also do and save some money.
Sure.
But great time to replace that debt. Replace the expensive one with the cheap ones. Banks are flush with money. NBCs don't have money. Banks are flush, but no one is borrowing. So good time to replace these, especially if it's a credit card.
Yeah, a couple of questions which are maybe not directly on money and investment, but more on how we deal with it. One is the
Okay.
family angle.
Okay.
Uh, how do you think husbands and wives can partner together in meeting their financial goals? Because especially in a culture like India, you typically see the man or the husband controlling the finances. And I'm not saying in all cases, but in most cases, it's left to the wife. And let's assume something bad happens, a tragic incident happens, everybody is left in a lurch. Is there some
I think
ideas that?
I think all of us are guilty at some point of thinking, that we are immortal. Nothing's going to happen to us quickly. So very important, I think, for us to first of all keep, the family informed of what are our investments, where are they, and what to expect in a worst case. Secondly, is if you are in a joint family or something like that, always create a will, because post demise, you always have squabbles, and money can divide families. We all know that. So create a will, especially if you're in a joint family and you expect some friction. Um, Sitting together and creating a financial plan, depends on your spouse's interest, your spouse's understanding, your spouse's confidence in you. So, if you can do it together, fantastic. Or if you need to do it and then convey it, that is also fine. But plan it properly. Plan it properly, and talk about it also in a sense of positivity rather than negativity, and that will help you. Uh, Either doing it together or do it. The person who knows how to do it, and then share it. That is also fine. That is also fine. If both of you can sit and work it together, then great. Then great. But always just share it. But make sure that the financial information is updated. And if you are in a joint family kind of situation, always do keep a will ready.
Sure. And maybe we can touch upon let's say a lot of us have a faith that we hold on to. And one of the things that we sometimes have a discomfort is, hey, this is becoming money minded, right? I don't, God has told me not to worry. He has told me he will provide. So hence, talking a lot about this and thinking about money is in itself somehow evil or shows a lack of faith. And since you are also part of a church and you deal with this as part of your daily life, how would you respond to that?
I think many of the verses where God says, "Don't worry." See, worrying by itself is a passive word. Worrying is just sitting and not doing anything about it and keep worrying. But God has always encouraged us to plan ahead, right? Even in the parable of the talents, the master gets extremely angry with the servant who didn't do anything. He just sat over it worrying. He sat over it worrying. If he actually was a little bit diligent, and if he thought there was an issue, he would have done something to save. So, the master actually tells him, why you could have gone to a bank and put it in a savings account and at least saved it. He uses those exact words. And I often tell people, I hope a banker doesn't read this, because then he will start saying, Jesus said to invest in my bank. But the point is that, the parable clearly tells us that we need to plan. Worrying is a passive word which God doesn't want us to sit and keep worrying about it, but we need to do something about it. Like a typical example, which I know, a very simple example, which we probably give a kid, is that you pray and say, God, help me pass the exam. But if you don't open your book, how will God help you? How will God help you? So you do what you have to do, and then God will bless you. And I think, I can testify personally that His grace will always be sufficient. But you do something. Don't sit back and relax, or don't sit back and worry. I think that is what the Bible says don't do. You do your part, and God will do His part. I think that's a very, very simple concept, I think. Because if there are so many verses in the Bible, right, from Ecclesiastes, where I think it says, invest in 7 ventures or in 8, because you do not know what is coming up, what is going to come up in the future. Proverbs is full of verses where it tells you to plan ahead, and it tells you that a wise man will plan ahead and save. A sinner or a slothful person, they use the word sinner, and a slothful person doesn't plan and rots. Those kind of verses are there. I think Proverbs 26, 28, I think something like that. There are many verses where you learn these things. So I think there's completely different. It's worrying is a passive act which God doesn't want you to do. Investing, planning is a positive thing, and when you do that, God will bless you. And I think when that multiplies, He expects you to help others.
Yeah. Thanks.
Right? If you are in debt, how do you help a migrant? How do you help a laborer? How do you help a laborer? How do you help a person without a food, or a fellow brethren who's struggling with that? How do you help him if you are in debt yourself? But if you are saved and invested properly, you'll be able to extend a helping hand. That is the important principle.
Very true. Very true. Very practical in these times. In fact, since you spoke about Proverbs, there were a couple of verses from Proverbs, which is in the Old Testament, right? Just
That's right.
and as we are having this conversation, I am just like blown away that something that was written almost 3,000 plus years ago is so relevant today when we are investing.
True.
Proverbs 13, chapter 13, verse 11 says, "Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it." Right? Speaks to a lot of these get-rich-quick schemes that people promise. Then there is another one, Proverbs 21:5. "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." I think there's numerous instances, like you said, in the Bible also, where we especially talk very practically about how we need to go about dealing with our finances. So, Glenn, we coming to
Few
the end.
verses very quickly. I think I just
Sure.
read, Ecclesiastes 11:2, which is so relevant today. Invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land. So relevant in today's current scenario. One very important one. Look at Proverbs 22, 26, and 27. Do not be among the ones who give pledges, among those who become guarantors for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should he take the bet from under you? This is so relevant today, because today if you are a guarantor for a loan and that person defaults, your property can be attached. That's a new Indian rule. So please be very careful. Many times as good Christian brethren, we stand guarantee, we sign a document thinking, oh, that nothing will happen to us. But if he defaults, you have to pay. Be very careful. Proverbs 13:16. A wise man thinks ahead, a fool doesn't, and even brags about it. That's just a few verses. Abhishek, are we through?
Just one question, Glenn.
Sure. Yeah. No, I just wanted to show them something else.
Yeah, just
I'll
one
stop
question,
there.
and maybe we'll go to your slide. There was a question about, like you said, if you have to help people who are in trouble, especially those in the lower class who are really struggling. This question comes from a friend of mine who asked, how can we help our our helpers come out of debt without paying off their debt? For example, if a woman is working in 3 homes and earning only 10K, but she has a debt of 45K, well, how are some things that we can do to help out?
If you trust her, you can pay her part of her salary. So that helps her, pay off part loan. You can, help her renegotiate the loan. You can help her renegotiate that, and or give her a one-time grant and reduce it from salaries. But for that, you have to trust them. These are possibilities, and I've seen many people doing it. In fact, in our church, there are, some workers, and they were in debt. And what we did was basically pay them X amount of salary in advance, and then adjusted it, every month for them. That helped, and we ensured that we paid directly. Don't give it to them. Pay the person who they owe money to directly. Pay it directly. We ensured we did that. So that is very positive. You trust them. They have been with you for a long time. That's a good thing for you to do.
Sure.
Because you can't do a financial plan with them here. There's no way you can counsel them. It won't work.
And another thing is about people who don't have a steady salary right now. What are some things that they can do to tide over the situation?
Again, if you have an emergency fund, great. Wherever you can, take a moratorium, then take it. What do you fall back on? One very important thing which you can fall back on, gold jewelry, which you don't use. And I think every house will have, one earring and the other earring missing, or a chain which is broken, or a bangle or a necklace which is completely outdated. My great grandmother gave it to me, and you don't even want to look at it, forget wearing it. all that is a good time for you to sell because gold is at its peak. And gold is investment, which is, it has an inverse correlation in the sense that whenever everything else is going down, gold will go up. And I can show you a quick chart of that a little later. But when everything else is going down, gold will go up. So this is a great time. Gold has already gone up substantially. And if you are in desperate need, then I think, either selling gold is clean. You just go sell it. And don't go to a gold jeweler. There are other places like companies like Attica, Gold Max. All of them buy it at a much lesser discount than a gold jeweler. So you can sell it and use that money to tide over some of your crises.
Sure. I think we'll pause on the questions for now, Glenn. Like you said, we will share your email ID, the chat, and also with an email that they will get tomorrow.
Sure.
Is there something that you want to share as we close?
Yeah, I just want to show you a couple of slides here, which we do. We just do it for the common man. Over the last, I think, last 3 weeks, we've done about 28, 29 presentations. So virtually every other day, we are doing some presentations. Sorry, it's not this. Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. So just few points which I want to share for you, which I think will be very, very useful. Not to again scare you, but to give you a perspective, right? Right. So here we go. How long do we take to recover? And if you look at this blue graph, that is the Great Depression. So it kind of bottomed out after 18 months, went up, and in about 25 months, it fell back again, and then it took about 4 years to fully recover. So how long will this recession last? That looks like the pain. Right. Just for your interest, one very interesting thing which happened, that crude prices, a certain type of crude, not which India uses, went to minus $36 few weeks back. Never happened in the lifetime of man. In fact, the screens where you buy crude couldn't go below zero. So people didn't know what price it had gone. It went to minus $36. Scary times. Look at gold. I was talking to you. We had a recession in 2001, the dot-com bubble. So gold was at about 375 rupees, and the dot-com bubble depression lasted till about 2006. And within that time, gold had gone up from 375 rupees to about 875 rupees. It had gone up more than 100%. Another recession in 2008, the Lehman Brothers crisis, gold was close to about 1,400, went up to 3,200. Now, currently, this is the trend. We are up about 35%. Can we go further? History suggests that yes. So gold can be a good investment to make, but do it in electronic gold. I want to show you this here. The safest investment which you can make today, apart from if you have a girl child below 10, then the government has a scheme called Sukanya Samarthi, which gives you 7.6% interest. That is the highest interest rate you can get today with a safe investment. Government guaranteed. 7.6%, but you have to have a daughter below 10 years. It is available for 2 girl children. Maximum you can invest is 1.5 lakhs per annum. But this one can be available to all. And I'll tell you why. Even though it is called Senior Citizen Savings Scheme, it gives you 7.4% interest. The maximum you can invest is 15 lakhs, minimum 1,000, time frame 5 years. Interest is reset every quarter. So interest goes up tomorrow. Don't worry, your interest will automatically go up. You're not locked in for 5 years. You can invest through any PSU bank or post office. Minimum age of investment is 60 years or 55. Why am I telling you this? Even if you're younger, this makes sense because you can invest in your father's, mother's, grandparents' names. They are not taxable. They won't be in a taxable bracket. I assume that. So you get the entire 7.4% in your hands. But if you took an FD in your name in a good bank, you will get 5%, 5.5 minus tax, 5%. So clear 2.4% extra, which can be huge. Only thing is when you do it in your parents' or grandparents' name, make sure that you are a nominee. Make sure that you are a nominee. Because if anything untoward happens, then it shouldn't become family wealth because this is yours. But this is an option for you to, invest and make money. So I just wanted to show you this. There are various other schemes which I'll just quickly show you. I'm not going to talk about this. All these give you higher interest rate than banks and are in fact safer than banks. Post office monthly income scheme, your senior citizen savings scheme, Sukanya Samarthi, PPF, which gives you 7.1, post office fixed deposit, which gives you about 0.2% than a bank, a good bank does. The only thing in post offices, some post offices are not fully computerized, even though that is now developing very quickly. So these are few things for you to invest, but be very, very cautious when you invest in these times. And also be prepared for any emergency, create an emergency fund, and then you trust God. Like my grandmother used to say, tell me very often, she used to always tell me that God helps those who help themselves. So you do what you need to do, and He will take care of the rest. Right? So, finance, it's a never-ending debate. How much is enough? How much is too much? How much is too less? But I think we will learn to strike the balance as we, go ahead in this walk. So I think that's probably will be my final statement. Sorry, we are running out of time. I think, but maybe one last question, Abhishek, if you want to do it, if there are many.
I've actually shared your email on the group just now, and I think we've gone over most of the questions in the chat as well.
Fantastic.
So some people had specific questions. The email should work, but I think this was really helpful from what I get. I think we were very practical, very direct, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of us, especially during these times. Not to get scared, like you said, not to get overwhelmed, but really plan for the future and be prepared, have faith, and just face this. It's just another way of planning for the future, just like we do so many other things. And for everyone on the call, thank you for staying back. Like we said, at Ashraya, we do believe in practically living out the faith that we believe in, and we are having these conversations every 2 weeks. If there are some topics that you feel will be relevant to the community at large, when you get an email from Danny asking for feedback about the session, do remember to put your inputs there, and we'll do our best to get some interesting people to have these conversations with, which will be helpful to a lot of us, right? Otherwise, thank you once again, Glenn. Thank you for making the time. It's
Most
been
welcome.
great.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to be a blessing to a lot of us. Thank you, and goodbye, everyone. Good night. Stay safe, and we hope to see you in the next session. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care of you. Thank you. Bye. God bless.